Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneurs podcast. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. And even better than that, you can find us on Spotify or wherever else you grow yourself through podcasts. So today I have with us Krissi Biasiello from Rotund Chef from South Philly, Pennsylvania. How are you doing today, Krissi?
I'm doing great. New year. Let's get this moving.
You can tell I'm like 30 in a row, like 30 days in a row, because I'm like starting to not mess up the intros anymore. If anyone knows, there's like, I really try hard to get everyone's names right, but like going day in, day out, I mix them all up and my words get twisted. So I was really happy that we got on the first take today. Excuse me. So, Krissi, I'm going to give a little commentary and then I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell your story. But one of the things I love about like sort of the world of Instagram is how we all can connect and how sort of there's just this world in food that I think you live this world just based on your experience, but there's so much care and kindness and there's so much positivity also, and there's so many connections you can make with the right people, and it's just such a beautiful thing. So it's something I want to talk about on today's podcast. But before we get into it, let's get into your story. Like, how'd you become a chef, entrepreneur, get on a TV show, and then we can talk about the struggles of your life, because I think they're all so important because they define who you are now. And I can tell that just from meeting you and your Instagram and going back and looking at the shows you were on. So let's start with your story.
Okay. So my name is Krissi Biasiello. I was born and raised in the Philadelphia area, born in South Philly. Eventually migrated up to Northeast Philly and ended up in good old Delco, a.k.a. the armpit of southeastern Pennsylvania. I come from a blue-collar family. My dad was a teamster and operating engineer. My grandfather ran the laundry at Pennsylvania Hospital for like 30-some years. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My stepmom worked down at the stock exchange down in Philly. A big family. My parents divorced when I was 2, so I have 2 large families on both sides. My mom's side of the family, my grandfather was raised on a farm down in Virginia, and my grandmother is a coal cracker from Scranton. And so very... traditional, waspy kind of values on that side. And then, on my father's side, very traditional Italian-American family, deep rooted in food and gathering and family. And, I grew up with, hard work, and family was like the number one priority. And that's pretty much what I base everything I do on.
I want to talk about this. I'm going to ask some detailed questions within this, but one of the things that I relate to you weirdly so exactly, like it's almost like our script was written the same. The divorced parents, I'm the product of the second marriage though, but the thing about it in the big family for sure, multiple families and Italian on one side, my father's all Italian, so I really identify with that, the hard work, the American dream, the fighting to get here. But then I do have the waspy side, like the mutt side. Like I don't know how else to describe it, because there's like Native American in there and Northern African and African American, and it's just all mixed in there somehow. Like I don't fully understand it over like hundreds of years in the United States. But there are these core values, these Protestant core values, like very much so, that are instilled in there. And then you have the Catholic Italian core values, work ethic that also gets mixed in there. And so I'm a product of that also. And it's very interesting because it's a very mashing, and having it happen in Pennsylvania, which is the blue collar world. Like, I don't know how else to describe Pennsylvania to anyone. It's basically Colorado before marijuana boomed. I don't know how other way to describe it.
I love that.
Because it's
so
spread
funny
out.
and true.
There's like mountains, there's wilderness, there's hiking. It's very outdoorsy. Ducks Unlimited, like people care about it. But like, you know, like marijuana boom, Colorado, and now you have a lot of raising of real estate property and stuff like that. Otherwise, Colorado's like a lot of mining and farming and stuff like that. Previously, maybe the tech boom there because of the hurricane in New Orleans, and all of the technology moved from New Orleans to Denver, which is why the tech centers, Denver Tech Center, is so big. But let's get back to Pennsylvania. I think one of the things that we're talking about is it's always Pennsylvania's a blue collar state that doesn't have any lot of blue collar work left in it. So as that transition happened, there was a lot of like mentality, particularly around our age group, that's like, oh my gosh, our parents are dependent on other people. Our parents are working for other people. Like, I don't want to be dependent on someone else. Like, what happens if this steel disappears, like Bethlehem Steel? Like, Bethlehem Steel in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania no longer exists. And so examples like that. So I think it's one of the things that when this happens, there's this push and this inspiration to do more, or our parents especially, to want us to do better than they did. So I just want to leave that as a footnote, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a second. But let's go back to, where did you start wanting to be a chef? Like, where did that come from? Did you always know? Is it something you developed?
So, I mean, both sides of my family are very, very talented in the kitchen. And, you know, I got this southern, you know, Northeast Pennsylvania kind of cuisine from, you know, mom's side, and then, you know, the full Monty of the Italian on, you know, dad's side. And I mean, ever since I can remember, you know, if I could reach the stove on a stool, you know, I would be up there stirring a pot of Sunday gravy with my grandmother. My mother was letting me make cookies. And, you know, I remember being like 8, 9 years old, and, you know, my mom and stepdad were sleeping, and like I would go downstairs and make breakfast all on my own. And it wasn't always great. One time, for instance, I grated potatoes. I tried to make like a big hash brown in the cast iron skillet. And I was like 8 years old. I didn't know to wash the potatoes. So like I served this gray mash, like grated potato thing to my mom in bed, and she's like, delicious. And obviously it was terrible, but like it was, you know, that's the kind of encouragement that I grew up with. And
it's the start.
Yeah.
Though.
And, you know, she could have been like, oh my God, what did you do? You didn't wash the potatoes, you know, blah, 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 blah. And she didn't. She was like, this is delicious. And then politely scraped it in the trash. You know, I was obsessed with my mom's dad, my grandfather, lovingly known as Stampy. And I mean, he was a phenomenal cook. And I just, you know, growing up on the farm and seeing all these little tricks he had, you know, like sugaring the cabbage for the coleslaw to let all the sourness drain out, you know, all the little tips and tricks. I watched him so intently, and him and I were so extremely close. And he passed away of lung cancer in 2000, just when I had just become a new mom and, you know, was starting this like life outside of him, so to speak. And I always loved to cook, and I always loved to be in the kitchen with my family and everything. But when he passed away, I felt like this connection was gone. And the only way that I knew how to bring him back into my home and allow my newborn to grow up with my grandfather, even though he wasn't physically here, was to try to replicate his recipes and his techniques. And that's, and fortunately, I was just really good at it.
No, I love this. Hold on. I want to pause just for the audience, and I do this a lot. I interrupt people, and I apologize.
No problem.
But it's, I want to go back to a second, because I think it's so important what you just said. And I think, like, so one of the things that happens is there was a legacy passed down to you, okay? There was the time invested in you to pass down something other than money. Okay. I think that that's so important because people hear legacy and they always think it's money or financial. It's not. Most of the time, it shouldn't be. Okay. Because like if you pass down the money without these type of resources as an entrepreneur, what are you passing down? And that's, I think it's just essential. And it's not that you were trained in any way, shape, or form in a culinary arts or went to school, at least that I heard you say. But one of the things that you're good at is you had the lifelong experience and someone spent the time with you to expose you to it also. So you had an education, you gained firsthand experience, and you got exposure to the world through it. I think those are three pretty important things. And so like when it came, you're like, it just came easy to me. I agree. You're probably really good at it, and you always had an interest probably from the day you made those first mashed potatoes, which is why by the time it got to that point, it seems so easy because you had already put in your quote unquote 10,000 hours. But I think the important part is there was an elder who invested in an up and coming person, not knowing whether or not that investment would ever fruit anything. He just did it because he knew that it was worth passing on and investing in you and spending the time. But what did happen is the investment, that seed that was planted 20 years prior or whatever it was, 30 years prior, is now the tree. That's you, right? In your business.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So, okay, so let's go there. You, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really good at this.
Yeah. And, I just started cooking for friends and family. It started out, like I said, with, it was like a double-edged kind of sword here that got me really into cooking, not just for survival, but to love it and eventually make it a business.
Well, and that's the trophy, right?
The first prong was, the family influence, particularly my maternal grandfather and my paternal grandmother, combined with becoming a single mom, not having a lot of money, not having a lot of resources. I made all my son's baby food because the jarred food was too expensive. So I would get these coupons from this program in Pennsylvania called WIC for young single mothers. And you could go to the farmer's market and you could cash in these coupons and you could get fresh fruits and vegetables and, things like that. So I would go to the local farmer's market, cash in all my coupons and get just any kind of vegetable. I wanted to expose my son to everything, Brussels sprouts, rutabagas, anything I could get.
Why though? Why did you want to expose him to all this?
Because I was always taught to try something before you don't like it. And I think that, all of these newfangled things and convenience meals and everything that are coming out, it's like, green beans are on the shelf. Okay, we'll just give them green beans. Oh, this is the jarred food that they're providing, so I'm going to do this. And, if a 10-year-old kid, take 10 10-year-olds, put them in a room. Have any of you tried a rutabaga? I guarantee maybe all of them. Maybe there's one kid that looks at you like,
I doubt any of them might be able to pronounce it, actually.
Exactly. And I grew up eating my grandfather had a huge garden, and I grew up eating an abundance of produce. And I don't want to make those decisions for my child, so I want to introduce him to everything I can, and then he can decide what he likes. He doesn't like cheese today. I almost gave him up for adoption, but he's my kid. I kept him, but he ate cheese till he was 5, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Ma, I don't like cheese," and I'm like, "Who are you?"
I know. What do you mean?
Your mother is like the biggest lover of cheese. Like, I love cheese more than you, I think.
Well, number one, you're Pennsylvania. There's Pennsylvania Dutch here and Pennsylvania everywhere.
Right.
And which eat cheese by the, milk and cheese for the Pennsylvania Dutch. Milk, cheese, and ice cream. So you have all that influence. And then I don't think Italians don't put cheese on. I mean, we put cheese on everything. It's part of our meal. Some people, it's butter. I would say we bring butter to the table and bread also, but we also bring a lot of cheese. So I love this.
Absolutely.
So anyway, go on. I like the exposure, though. I think it's important, and I agree with you 100%. Even though We acquire flavors sometimes as we get adults, like Brussels sprouts become less bitter to us as we get older, for example. But I do agree with the exposure and the comfortability and being uncomfortable and trying new things, which is an uncomfortable thing, where if you're comfortable in the uncomfortable, it just becomes your comfort zone and you become more exploratory, especially in food. So I like what you're saying and anchoring that point. So I didn't mean to get you off topic, but go on. So you're going to the farmer's market.
No.
You're trying to expose them to as many vegetables.
Yeah. And like baby food was expensive, man. I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with a newborn. I didn't have a lot of money, so anything I could do to scrimp and save, and 4 jars of baby food would cost what 2 pounds of tomatoes and a bunch of carrots and celery cost. So what am I just do the math. I mean, of course I'm going to buy the fresh stuff. I can make more of it. I can freeze it. So I wanted and by the way, have you ever tasted jarred baby food? Like it's disgusting.
Oh, it is disgusting. So I love this thing, though.
I also wanted to make it taste good for him. Like, even though he's, 8 months old, it doesn't mean that, he shouldn't eat a nice, delicious sweet potato. I mean, come on, the kid's a human.
Yeah. So I like this a little bit. I want to talk this. So all the stuff you're learning on the farm, because there's a lot of preserving that's going on the farm, like making product because you can only grow seasonally, and then freezing stuff.
Right.
Is this all what you're putting into practice now, like what you did on the farm with your grandfather? Is this sort of what's going on here? You're extending your food out, not just days, but months.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
So, as I mentioned, my grandfather grew up on a farm in a little town in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia called Swope, Virginia. And I think population maybe 300. Like, it was just, and I mean, he lived on a farm. He had to learn how to preserve and everything. So my grandfather had a huge garden, as I mentioned before, and he canned the tomatoes. He made fresh salsa. He made, fresh pickles, and he canned everything. And at any point in the winter, you would open up the storage cabinets in the basement, and it would just be decks on decks on decks on decks of fresh, tomatoes packed with basil, and fresh homemade applesauce, and fresh salsa, and just, green beans, peaches, bread and butter pickles. So again, I was exposed to this. So, I was very fortunate because not a lot of kids, especially today, are exposed to these old school practices, or vintage practices, they're calling them, which to me is a way of life. It's not really vintage, because, I mean, with the way inflation and everything is going right now, I mean, I'm not trying to get political at all, but you go to the supermarket now, and, a gallon of milk that used to be $3 last year is now close to $7.
Well, and let's talk about like pre-2008, milk was like 99 cents a gallon,
Absolutely.
So, and if we look at eggs right now, I used to be able to get 12 dozen eggs for less than $1.99, sometimes $1.69. And I'm not saying we shouldn't up the price as long as the farmers are getting it, but that's not what's happening
exactly.
here. But anyway, go on.
Oh, another story I could go on about because I am very passionate about, farmers and local produce. I'm an old spirit.
Me too.
I was raised with my grandparents around me constantly. So I learned and adapted all of the old ways. My mother carried on these my stepmother still makes the same lentil soup that her mother taught her, who's Sicilian. You know what I mean? Like, and I was just exposed to this, and we gathered a lot, like both sides of the family. Sunday dinner, a must. Like, we don't care where you are. We don't care what you're doing. You be here on Sunday dinner. And I was so fortunate because one weekend I was at, mom's side. One weekend I was at dad's side. And I just got exposed to so much. And it really laid down the passion for how I wanted to raise my son and feed my son. And like I said, financially, it made sense because making your own food and going to the farmer's market to buy an abundance. I mean, I could buy a giant box of produce for $18. That would last us 2 weeks. If I went to the supermarket, it would have cost me $40 to $50. So it just made sense. And all of these factors contributed to me, honing my skill and learning how to be the best. And I watched cooking shows constantly, and because I just was searching for that connection that I had with my grandfather. And the kitchen was always the gathering place. The kitchen was always the spot. So all of these factors contributed to me being where I am today and being able to do what I love and make people happy with my food. And let's not, BS here, but make a lot of damn money too.
Yeah, and that's the truth, right? And that's like, you don't want to be in the same situation you were in where you're having to go to the farmer's market and extend your food, and you're trying to figure out a way to extend your money and extend who you are. So I'm going to get into the entrepreneurial side and where it goes. But one of the things I do want to talk to you about the farmers and stuff like that. And if we don't do it on this episode, I'm going to reach out to you, and just so the audience can hear, I would love to do an episode just where you and I can sort of talk about that, the preserving of food, the extending of food, the importance of it. And we may touch upon in this episode, but I just want to touch upon a little bit because we live by such abundance in the United States, including the way we eat and the amount of food that we have, that we waste so much food, and we don't think about the long-term sustainability. We just think the grocery stores are always going to be open. And it's an idea, guys. It's a framework inside of our heads because it's allowed to happen right now. It's protected by a military. It's protected by a government. It's protected by a lot of things, and it's protected by an extremely generous government. And the rest of the world doesn't operate the same way we do. And I just think it's important that we talk about it, and we talk about the farmers and the food, and we talk about how important it is that we see what's really going on and who's making the money now, and the investment bankers that are coming in and actually owning the land, or the Chinese, or Bill Gates, or whoever, and we just have a discussion. And so if you're open to that, I would love to do that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like I said, I was fortunate enough to be exposed, to the farm, and, I have cousins that are very big in the agriculture world. I have a cousin who runs a catfish hatchery in North Carolina. I have another cousin who works, in poultry science, and his wife is, one of the heads of like the Pennsylvania Pork Commission. So there's a lot of agriculture surrounded in my family. As kids, we would go to Lancaster all the time and, visit the farm. My grandparents actually had a trailer in Honeybrook, up by Lancaster. And, we pretty much went there almost every weekend, and, a big exposure to the Amish and the community, and, the way they practice sustainability and buying the fresh goods and, things like that. So I had a really well-rounded childhood, and I think it's important to understand that not everybody has that. I feel like I was very lucky because in a way I was kind of handed this skill. It was never meant to be my profession. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a music teacher or choral director. And, somehow this ended in my lap. And, I think a lot of it had to do with the exposure that I was given. It just kind of molded me into this human that I never thought I would be. I never thought I would be a chef. I mean, that's so odd, to me. It was never in my dream. I cooked because there was a connection. It saved me money, and I wanted to make people happy with my food and feel this connection that I had lost with the most important person in the world that had left me too soon, and it just developed, and I'm so grateful for it. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better, well-rounded childhood.
So I agree with you. I'm in a similar situation. Like, I grew up on a farm. I've been very exposed to farming, both for food and for whatever else. I guess you could call it, for hobby. But the thing I think that you hit on is just by the nature of our parents exposing us to other people, there was legacy passed down, there's skills passed down. And like, I'll give you an example. I always knew when I was born, I was an entrepreneur. It just stuck, whether it was mowing lawns or whatever. But I always had, and I played soccer, and that really did well with that. Always a determined, hardworking kid. And I learned a lot of teamwork there. But one of the things I always, in the Italian family or in my family, is we always came together around food, always. As a big family, whether it was relatives in town, whether we were throwing a barn party, because my mom would throw barn parties for her clients, and really did a lot for that when we were younger, and really showed me a lot of entrepreneurism there. I don't know why she doesn't do it anymore, or didn't do it anymore towards the end, but for some reason,
Invite
stuff
me.
like that.
I love barn parties.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's the, I don't know, you're exposed to so much when you're that age, and it's when you're a sponge anyway, that it's the time to do it, that if the legacy is not being passed down beyond just what you learn in school and beyond your parents trying to just be your friend, like so many parents just want to be your friend. It's not what this is in the world. Right. And you're preparing them to go kick ass in the world, and you're preparing them, if anything ever happens, that they can survive on their own, or they can be an independent, strong person. If you're not around, or someone kicks them to the curb, like, how are they going to stand back up? Because that's the more important thing. And the thing about the farming and the animals is we've detached ourselves so far from the animal kingdom, we almost don't think we're a part of it anymore, like we're some higher being beyond them. While that may be true, we may be a higher being, but not in the sense that we think it. And we are a part of them, and whether we eat them or they are our pets, we are integrated with them. And that's the problem that I don't think everyone understands, and we've sort of detached ourselves so much from the farms and the animals and the things we eat, or even pets, because we don't have a lot of pets anymore. People have less and less pets because they're a distraction or they're too much responsibility. No crap. That's what our job is. That's part of being a human and being the higher power on the planet. Hello. But we can talk about that another day in Noah's Ark, and how we just never give that story enough credit. But it's one of those things that that I really connect with you on this. Not only is our background similar, the work ethic, I think that no matter where I am, I'm not stuck here. I will figure out a way to use the resources that I have to build a better life for myself. And I'm not sure what skills I have, but I'll figure them out as I go, and I'll leverage them. And any ones I need to learn, I'm willing to do it along the way humbly. And so let's talk about where you go from here. Like, you've started this, you're doing the baby food, like where does the entrepreneur spirit come from out of here? Like, was it always there? Is there someone in your family that exposed it to you? Because now you're starting to go out into the world, and you get on a TV show, and you start to build this brand, and so how does all that happen?
So it really started out as I needed extra money, honestly. And I wouldn't go out and get a second job working for somebody else, because then I couldn't be home with my son. And, I was a paralegal, and, I worked, in town in Center City, Philadelphia. And, I was away from my son, by the time I would drop him off, either for school or daycare when he was younger, to the time, I got off the L train and the bus. It was like 6 o'clock. So, I'm spending essentially 10 to 11 hours a day, 5 times a week away from my child, and I'm the only parent. So I can't go out and get a second job because I'm not leaving him. You know what I mean? Like, I need to be with my child. I need to spend as much time with him as I can. So it started out as, crap, I need money, but I won't leave my child. Yeah. And I just started cooking from home.
And entrepreneurship is the number one tool to get out of any situation you're in, guys. Right. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, I just hate to tell you this. In the long run, it may not seem so in the short run, but the ingenuity that happens in entrepreneurship, or ingenuity that turns into entrepreneurship, I should say, in a situation when you're stuck like this, it's really, really like you did it, you've taught your son it also in the way you eat. You chose discomfort. There was no guarantee of income. You're taking a risk, but you're like, I need both of these things. So the mother of invention is entrepreneurship, which means I got to work for myself, right? And sell my creations also potentially. Is that where you are?
Yeah. I mean, it like I said, it was a combination of I'm not making enough money to support us, to how can I make more money and not abandon my child, you know? So that was really, you know, the recipe for how it all started. And the more I cooked for people, the more people were like, oh my God, this is the best sausage and peppers I ever had. You should sell this. Oh my God, this cake is amazing. You should, whoa, did you decorate that cake? You should sell them. And I'm like, really? I can make money off of this? And, you know, fortunately for me, the food scene was, and I hate and love social media. You know, I love it because I can connect with so many people and market myself and things like that. But I also hate it because there's such negativity and things like that. But, you know, que sera, that's for another day. But, you know, I really credit social media, particularly Instagram, when it first came out, and really started to showcase food. And it was something that we didn't really see. And this was like the early 2000s. I saw this like first of all these food pictures, and, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, look at that. That's amazing. You know, the Food Network started to evolve, and then there was the cooking channel, and it just became this, like, it wasn't just, okay, we're going to sit at the table, you know, for dinner. This became a commodity that somebody wanted to buy. Somebody was willing to pay for the best of the best because they saw it here and they wanted it on their table. And I somehow was able to do that. And I don't know how. I guess I'm just good at what I do. I have a gift. I'm grateful to God every day for it. I saw that this was starting to become a thing, and I was like, I can do this. Let's do it. And if it doesn't work, so what? I have extra food for me and Mikey. I'll, you know, freeze it, you know, if it doesn't sell. But it did. It sold so much, I had to cut off orders. And it was just like, oh my God, what is happening? And that's how my very first catering company came into fruition. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without, you know, the help of some amazing friends. My former business partner, Noelle, she was integral in helping me really do the business side. I have to tell you, I am not a good businesswoman. Just not a good businesswoman. I am self-taught. I do the best that I can. But, you know, I always joke to my staff when we go on private dinners, I'm the talent. And they kind of like handle this and handle that and handle this. And I cook and I make things look good. But, you know, it was definitely, you know, her that taught me the business side of things. And although I'm still not great at it, I would have been a lot worse if she hadn't come along. But the catering just blew up. I had a couple friends that worked for doctors' offices, and they started setting me up with their pharmacy reps. And, you know, the pharmacy reps are always wanting to cater lunches for the doctors' offices. So I started doing that. And, you know, pretty soon we had our own van, and I'm doing this and that, and I'm everywhere. And it just blew up, and I loved it. It didn't feel like work. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm having so much fun doing this.
Then what happens?
So I kind of burned myself out, I'll be honest with you. And
we've all been there as entrepreneurs when all of a sudden we become super successful or we hit a streak. I've been there myself in grad school, and the companies are growing and multiple companies, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, like how do I control this? And my mistake was I didn't grow the people at that time enough along with me. But I'm curious about how like you deal with this, because for me it was just like I didn't have a lot of skill set in what happens when you burn out, because no one had burned as hot as I did previously in my family and gotten so hot. But I'm just curious, how did you handle all of it?
Same, definitely same. So I am the type of person, and I am like this in business, in personal, in romantic relationships. If it ain't working, I'm done.
Wow.
Like,
me too.
Have this ability.
Me
I
too.
just have this ability to know that this is not working for me, and I'm a little more conscious of casualties now. But then I was like, look, my son and me are the most important things in this world, and if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And now I'm a little more conscious. I don't set the bridge on fire, then throw a bomb at it, and then take pictures of it. Now I gradually walk across the bridge, and I'm like, listen, I'm going to walk off this bridge now. I'm probably going to set it on fire. You should stand over there. But back then I was just like, this isn't working. F it. I'm done. I started to not love it, and if I don't love it, I don't want to do it, and I just stopped, and I stopped for a couple of years, and I just went back. I let the catering business go, and I just started doing little side jobs for family and friends. So I was still
back
cooking,
to the basics.
But not doing it as a business. And it's really important that I stress this because it's an important part of my story. I have learned through the past, 20 years of doing this, that I love to cook. I do not love it as a business. And that's going to sound crazy because I have a food business, but I have now in the last 5 or so years found the balance.
You and I are so similar. I can't even, we're going to talk about this a lot, but go on.
So I realized, after being on the TV show and how quickly I blew up after that, and again, I burned myself out again, and I actually stopped cooking for other people for a good year and a half, and I had to fall back in love with it, cooking for other people again outside of my family. And I also miss, I'm a paralegal. I've been in the legal field for, over 2 decades. And I am very passionate about psychology, and I never got to finish college because I was a young, working single mother, and I was like, there's other things that I want to do. I want to use my brain. Not that I don't use my brain in cooking, but like I want to read. I want to draft documents. I love being involved in the legal system, and and I was like, how can I find this balance? And I had this idea that I would start doing private dinner parties and only schedule, 1 or 2 a month, so I could still do what I wanted to do, still make good money, but have a normal life. Go in, sit at my desk, have a coffee, not have the responsibility of worrying about my business 24/7. I was still bringing in a paycheck, still using my brain, still activating the legal skills that I had acquired over the years, and then taking this other thing that I love and make good money at and doing that too. And it took a long time to find that balance, and I have it now, and I love it, and I wouldn't change it for the world now.
And there's the thing that I'm going to turn it into currency, because I want the audience to anchor this point. I love anchoring points and cementing them, because I need these things are life-changing events. One of the things that you talked about is like, once you don't see any ability to move forward, you burn the bridge or whatever, or however you described it. I'm very similar. I understand what you're saying, and I understand walking over it before, but I'm still going to set it on fire. And I understand that, and here's why. Because time is our most valuable currency, guys. It's not money. Money is not actually what we get. Money is the reward or the trophy we get for using our time well and balancing it amongst all the things in our life. And when it goes out of balance or we're unhappy, that time has become wasted time. Okay, I don't know how else to describe it.
That.
So
I absolutely love that. I love that, and I am going to steal and adapt that as well, because that was such a great explanation. Like, money comes and goes, but you can't get your time back. And I think that is so important. And I love that you just brought that out there, because I couldn't agree with you more. Wow. Very good statement.
And as I've adapted it in my own life, like I started when I was around 30, like really trying to get this into my life and live every day to the fullest. And what is the time really worth? And what am I wasting my time on? What is actually not moving me or my family forward? But it's to your point, okay? And there's a saying in the Bible, and I'm just going to tie it back to this because I am a believer in God. He does guide me. I have a very good relationship with him, and I align my will with his will, or his plan with my plan, always.
Yes, sir. Always.
But it's that if the tree stops bearing fruit, or the fig tree stops bearing figs, let it die. And we often try to water it and save it, and we're attached to it, and we get emotional with this tree, and oh my God, I spent so much time with this tree and watering it. But the time has already been invested. The tree did well while it was bearing fruit. It doesn't bear fruit anymore. You can't keep investing your time in it, nor keep looking backwards. And so it's one of those things that just anchors so strong in me that, and sometimes I can act what seems harshly, because I can all of a sudden be like, yeah, this deal's done, we're not moving forward, and we just negotiated for 3 months, and they're like, well, we already spent 3 months of time. I'm like, yeah, like, money aside, like, everyone's like, oh, it's worth so much money and whatever. I get it that it's worth so much money, but I'm not wasting any more of my time, because I have a feeling I'm going to be wasting a lot of it in the future by dealing with you guys, even if there is a ton of money. And so it's that type of thing that we don't check. And even in our relationships, we don't check it as a core value thing. We're spending all of our time with this person when we die. We're not going to be, it's really doubtful we're going to be losing teeth, not being able to see, barely getting off the couch, and we're going to be humping each other galore. So the fact that we're like not working on our brains, to your point, or looking for that type of relationship and core values, I'm not saying there shouldn't be a physical, mental, and spiritual attraction, but I think there has to be reality. And we often, the whole thing is we rush into this and we don't value the time thing. Oh, they have money.
Right.
They'll take care of me. Oh, they're really kind. They'll take care of our children. Or right now, we're really attracted to each other. And we just don't take that concept. So it's the same in business. I think we rush into things sometimes, and everyone's like, yeah, we're supposed to jump into business. I agree with you. You should jump in. You shouldn't be afraid to be an entrepreneur. But you need to be aware of how you're going to spend your time. And if that time is, I call it a visionary thread. I don't know where I got it from, but it makes complete sense to me, because that thread, the more commonality in our life, when we tie more things together to that, all of our activities, what is the one thing that I can do today that benefits the most for me and the people in my life, and then that weaves the blanket that is my life eventually when I'm dead, and what our blanket of a life looks like. I just think it makes sense to me that way. And the more I narrow down that thread and focus on it in my time, the better that blanket's going to be. Because if I'm not spending time weaving the blanket or on the visionary thread and on something else, the blanket's going to be pretty small. And so that's just the way I look at it. It just makes sense to me, and I'm a visual person. The visualization is a big part of who I am, and how I have hopes and dreams and goals that no one can see in a million years. And so I like this. So let's talk about, what do you do at this point? Like, what's going on in Krissi's mind? Like, you're like burned out again. Like, you've done the TV show. You're like, my time is more valuable than this. Like, I need to be doing something where I'm not stressed out during the time that I have.
Yeah. So a lot of the show, and I mean, I could do a whole podcast just on the PTSD and the scenarios involved in the show. A lot of it had to do with being on the show and the negativity and the just terrible, stressful. A death threat. I mean, you talk about it, I've gotten it. And that also led me to step out of the culinary world. A lot of people will be like, "Oh my God, like you were the most popular contestant on that season of MasterChef. Why don't you have more followers on Instagram?" Well, because I locked that crap down. Because not only was I getting death threats, but my child was getting death threats, things like that. And you think like, oh, okay, somebody in Malaysia sent you a death threat. Okay, yeah, they're in Malaysia, but how do I know they don't come here? There are some pretty thick tickets in this world, to quote Dolly Parton's character from Steel Magnolias. And I had to look out for me and my mental health and the mental health of my child, because it wasn't just me that, was experiencing this. And my child, was 12, 13 years old when this was going on. And like, his mother is getting all these hateful things sent to her. Like imagine, especially a son and his mom, as close as him and I are, imagine what that did to him, and his social relationships and, his mental well-being. So it was a combination of being burnout and having to step back from the spotlight, so to speak, because it was just so traumatic for me and my child. And I needed to decompress and go back to my quiet life pre-MasterChef, to kind of discover myself and figure out, was this really worth it? Can I brush all this off? Can I ignore, the haters and the hate mail and can I protect my child from it and still do what I love? Like, how do I find this balance? And that was that whole year and a half that I had to take off and just kind of be like, what the F am I doing? And when I tell you, God must have gotten so tired of my voice because I'm just like, I would lay down at night and I'm just like, all right, big guy, what are we doing here? Send me a sign, do something, and I would talk to my grandfather and just be like, bam.
We're like two peas in a pod. We're like two peas in a pod. I'm like, listen, I've been where you are and I understand not exactly where you've been, but I've been where you are. And I want you to keep going just because I'll reflect on it in a second, but this is very powerful. This is very powerful for anyone out there trying to be an entrepreneur or also build a public personal brand. Like, I think this is very important because we don't talk about it, but go on, please.
So I think that, I'm going to go into the whole MasterChef thing because it really is a big part of who I am now and who I was and who, I decided that I didn't want to be anymore. I'm from South Philly, okay? Everybody has this idea of people from Philly. Oh my God, they threw snowballs at Santa Claus. Oh my God, they're so rude. They're so angry. They're so mean. Okay, I grew up in a very loud family where,
yes, we are loud Italians. There's a lot of people in a room. Yes,
listen,
keep going.
If you were wearing an ugly shirt, you better believe the whole family was going to break your stones and tell you that was the ugliest shirt they ever saw, and then give you a hug and tell you they love you and they'll see you next Sunday.
You gotta learn to have thick skin and thin skin.
Yes, and I think it comes with, just look at, I love the Mummers Parade. It is one of my most cherished traditions. I mean, look at the Mummers, for instance. If you ever want to embody a Philadelphian, you got to look at the Mummers Parade. These are rough, tough, carpenters and electricians and longshoremen and cops and firefighters, and they put this makeup on and these fancy things, and they dance and they do this, and that could not be to me what Philadelphia is more about. This blue collar, rough, tough, I will knock your lights out if you threaten me or my family. But at the same time, the guy that I knocked out last week, if he doesn't have food on his plate, I'm going to bring him down a platter. And that's what Philadelphia is all about. And I think it's very misunderstood. And I think Philadelphians as a people are very misjudged and looked down on. And I find it very agitating.
I agree with you.
When I went to MasterChef, it was the second time in my life I had ever flown on a plane, been further west than Pittsburgh. I had no idea. I had only been on a plane one time in my life in 1997. I was leaving my child for the first time. I was very, standoffish because I didn't know what I was getting into. I had never been exposed to anything outside of my immediate tri-state area. Aside from, being on the farm and stuff like that, I didn't know what people from LA were like. I didn't know what people from Chicago were like, or, Sacramento, or, Texas. And all of a sudden you get thrown into this situation with 100 people from all walks of life. And they're all looking at you like, oh, you're the scumbag from Philly. And so right away, I had a chip on my shoulder. I was not very well received. The only people that did receive me well were people from the East Coast, Malcolm from Boston, Kathy from the Bronx. Those were my ride or dies because they were also East Coast. They were also very like me in similar ways. So I had a chip on my shoulder from day one because I was not received well. I'm the loud person in the room. I come in, oh my God, hi, I'm Krissi. I'm from Philly. Where are you from? And people are looking at me like, who is this loud, heavyweight girl with the crazy curly hair? And why is she talking to me? It was very unwelcoming. And, I was a fish out of water. I didn't know anybody. No one there was like me, so it was very difficult. And I'm also the type of person where, look, I'm a fighter.
Me too. Yep.
And I'm not proud to say it, but I've been in a lot of fist fights in my life. And, I'm not afraid to throw down if I have to. And when you come at me and you disrespect me on no basis, just because you don't understand me, or you think I'm loud, or you think I'm obnoxious, I'm going to fight back. And unfortunately, I was a little too myself, a little too Philly, I think. Yeah. And while I'm proud that I stayed true to my roots and I stayed true, when I saw myself on television, I was a little embarrassed because I thought, that may be appropriate for 21st and Emily Street in South Philly, but that's not appropriate for the world. And I didn't like a lot of my behavior. And the thing that agitates me most about the experience is the editing and how it was made to look like I was the antagonist of every situation, when in reality, a lot of the things that were portrayed negatively of me on the show were reactions to the way other people treated me. And, I feel like I was the scapegoat for that season because I was the easiest to expose, I think. And it really changed who I was as a person because I am going to be honest here, it was not a good experience. I love the friends that I had made. I loved all of the teaching. I mean, when Gordon Ramsay is teaching you a skill for free, okay, you don't spit on that, and I will never knock the culinary experience and knowledge and exposure that I got, but the entire experience of being on the show and the aftermath was hell. There's no other way. I still have PTSD. In January of 2020, before the pandemic hit, my best friend John and I decided to fly into Sacramento and do the entire Pacific Coast Highway. And we were stopping in San Francisco, Monterey, LA, and ending up in San Diego. And when I was driving into LA, and it was the first time that I had been back in Los Angeles since being on the show, I had a panic attack. Just driving on the 405 and seeing the signs for Los Angeles, I had a panic attack because the experience was so traumatic for me that I still have issues to this day. And it's also a reason why I have suspended my business where it is, because I don't want to be bigger than I am, because I don't think that I can mentally handle the negativity and the aftermath of, my post MasterChef appearance. It was very traumatic.
Yeah, let me talk about this. I am very sorry that happened to you, and I want to just talk about this with the audience. I wasn't gonna go down this way, and this is like more stuff we do on the Centurion Leadership Battalion podcast as we relaunch it, but I'm gonna tie it back into this because this is my job and this is what I take pride in doing, and I believe I can help and help the world. I've been exactly where you are. Not where I haven't traveled. Like, I've always been exposed to the world, and I've always traveled, and I use soccer as a means to get me places that I couldn't get, like I would have not normally been able to go. And my father worked for a business where I was able to see the world, sort of. But one of the things I want to talk about is when you start to succeed and individuals spin your success into things, or they spin it into negativity, or they take negative parts of your personality and they leverage it, and the hate and disrespect and bullying, I would use the word bullying because I don't know, yours was on an international level, which I can't even imagine. Mine wasn't even close to that.
Yeah.
But
my son and I actually kept track, and I have received hate messages from 32 countries.
Wow.
I mean, like, I laugh about it, but, and I just want to say, I brought up Malaysia before. Malaysia, I could never go there. For some reason, Malaysia hates me. They think I'm the most vulgar, terrible person in the world, and I will never visit Malaysia because I could be killed. I don't know. Malaysia really hates Krissi.
So one of those things is, I think people misunderstand, and I think people, like, I'll say humans. It's humans. We do this thing where we judge people, or we've never even met them. It's someone on a television. Like, we should just be aware, and how that person is portrayed on the TV and the way the editing and stuff works is the way they want to tell the story on the show. And there has to be, like, if you go to any film school, guys, there has to be a story and there has to be conflict in order for a show to do well. And so they're creating conflict. And I don't know how else to tell you guys that, but it sells. Why do you think we do the news we do? Why do you think we have the papers we have? Why do you think we have the trashy magazines we have? It's because conflict sells. And the more you turn up the volume on the conflict, the better your show does. So even though it's a show about culinary stuff, they're exposing the conflict and the competition to an extent to get ratings and views all the way to Malaysia.
Right.
It worked.
Oh, and they got it.
Yeah. So that's
definitely got it.
That's just the way. And for me, I will tell you guys, like, as an entrepreneur and as a human and as someone who doesn't chase money or the short-term outcome, which is ratings, and yes, of course, you want to keep the show going and you want to keep people employed and all of that, but then the day you still have to sleep at night, and at the end of the day, what you do has real long-term outcomes, whether you're spreading negativity or positivity. So whether or not the argument is Krissi deserved the hate mail or not, I'm not going to tell anyone, because here's the real thing, is there never should have been an information put out there by anyone that should allow that to happen. There should have been mentoring. There should have been coaching. There should have been responsibility as a human to grow the individual based on her situation, and they should have had more people knowing what she was doing. I'm sorry, but That's the point of a show.
There was none of that.
We put TV and reality TV, and we turn up the volume on conflict, and we think that that's the way humans are supposed to interact. And while Philadelphia, New York, and D.C. and us East Coasters, we seem confrontational and stuff, it's just because we're direct. That's it.
Right.
And we're loud because we're having fun always. Even when it seems, and if we're loud when we're raising our voice and mad at each other, believe me, the other person's doing it right back to us, and it doesn't matter. Like we all have an ability to be adults and be like, yeah, we did that, and you're right. I will go give you a plate of food if you need it. It doesn't matter if we fist fought today. I will, and tonight I find out you need food. And I'm going to say, sorry, we got in a fist fight. I was wrong, but I hear you need food. Let me help you. Period.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And it's just, we've lost this. And I get it. We want everyone to be model citizens, and we're looking for this perfect human, but yet we purposely expose conflict. And so we just got to be careful, guys, because TV is not the real world, even though it's called reality TV. It's not reality.
Not.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
It's a play on words. It's like organic, being organic, guys. Organic existed before we ever created chemicals, before we ever created things as humans. Organic is just the way things were. And like we created a new marketing term and stamp on it and charge more money for it, and even though the farmers don't get more money, but somehow organics cost more. So it's just like, these things are things we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of what's being heard. And I'm a positive person on this podcast. I do positivity. I actually know who Krissi is, and I've seen the season I know what season she's on. I used to watch the show. And I will tell you guys also this. I do not watch TV anymore as a human. Like over the last 4 years, I've started to completely eliminate. Like I'll watch a cartoon here and there or a TV show like on Netflix, but I actually barely make it through. I'll go to a movie and see a movie theater. But my problem is this. Human beings by nature gossip. And human beings by nature exaggerate. And humans by nature like conflict, and it attracts them. You attract more people to a fire than you do to honey. Just saying. People are going to go watch a fire versus a bee making honey. Just saying. Absolutely. But one's way more positive in the environment and doing way more for the world and our survival than the fire, yet we'd rather go watch that. Okay?
I think one of the most, absolutely. I think one of the most important takeaways from MasterChef was that I saw myself through the eyes of the world, because MasterChef airs in 34 different countries. And, I wasn't happy with the way that I was portrayed. It was very unfair. But like I said, I could have reacted better. And then I wouldn't have given them anything to, hate me on. And, I learned a lot. And I think that the most important thing about my stint on MasterChef was that I learned who I didn't want to be anymore. And I tried really hard, and it didn't happen overnight. Trust me. I mean, the show was 10 years ago, and I'm still growing as a person. I turned 44 in 13 days, and I'm still not where I want to be. But I realized that I wasn't likable. And, having that wall up and that big, was not just good for me, but for my business either. I can't, spout jokes from comedians that, are going to be misinterpreted, and label me as something I'm not. And I can't do this and I can't do that, because I ultimately, at the end of the day, have a business to run. And in stifling those opinions and that, telling you what I think you need to hear, who am I? My opinion is no more valuable than yours. And who do I think I am, spouting these political rants and spouting these things? And I don't need to share that. And it makes me unlikable, and it makes people not want to patron my business. And that was another thing that I had to learn. What you do outside of your business, it comes back on your business. So,
Absolutely.
me looking like a jackass on national television makes me look like a jackass in business. And people aren't going to respect that I am good at what I do, because maybe my personality doesn't reflect that drive and passion that I have for what I want to do. So
it's interesting.
I think any
agree
experience you have to grow from. And I think that I grew and am still growing from this experience and learning how to be a better human overall.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the and 100% I think reflection's important. I think likability, if you're in business, is important. I think staying true to yourself is very important, but there's and I've learned this myself, you've got to pick and choose which parts of your personality you turn up the volume on.
Absolutely.
Not all of them. And it's hard when you're a rising person, and particularly you're from the East Coast and you're Italian, and there's a lot of family members, and it's just the way things are. Kids are loud. I just spent some time with my grandmother and some family for New Year's real quick, because I didn't know whether I was going to get the time with her again, because she's in stage 5 kidney failure because of diabetes and refusing dialysis. So I'm trying to quick spend time with her, even though that wasn't my plan. I'm supposed to be recording and back in Nashville, and I've just adjusted my schedule. But I want to talk about this. Likability is a big thing, and I think that one of the things that I've learned, and I've learned this through the podcast, I've been very vulnerable and maybe too authentic, and it's come back and bitten me in the ass, for lack of a better term.
Oh, yeah, same here.
And so, because people will take your vulnerabilities and leverage them against you if you're not careful, and you got to be careful how you do it and what happens. And especially if there's jealousy or envy, or you have a skill that outshines someone, those things that you unintentionally think you're helping someone do or give them are relating to them, they will then turn around and leverage it against you. That's why I talk about a lot now as a human, what are the core values? And if I make a mistake now, I am so quick to fix it or change my trajectory that it's not even funny.
Own up to it.
And here's the thing, I get misinterpreted the other way now. Now I'm so positive and now I'm so likable that everyone thinks I want to date them or make out with them in a bar, or that I'm trying to get their number, or that I want a relationship with them. And I'm like, no, I just want to be friends with everyone. No relationships. I'm trying to build my life again and build a podcast and start all over again, learn from my past mistakes. The whole podcast, public figure thing, semi-thing, how much people took everything I said, the vulnerability parts out of the podcast, and then leveraged them against me. Even if I was negotiating a business deal with someone, I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I did not see you bringing in up something I said in a podcast to try to leverage me in a business deal. But those are the things that happen. And it's okay. I'm a more fair person. I try to figure out how both parties can win. That's just the way that I am. And if we're going to go to war, I'm going to probably win because I don't give up. I will stay consistent for 20 years. That's just who I am. And so that's the part I already know that. I already have the confidence to know those things. It's just a matter of how I portray it and how I come out. And confidence doesn't necessarily mean I have to come out with cockiness. And while cockiness can be deserved if you actually earn it through confidence over a long period of time, it can often be misconstrued. And that's what I think. And I've watched the season, and I agree in a lot of ways, but I think there's a huge amount of confidence in who you were at that time. And I think part of the problem now is there's this shaking in the confidence because you were so sturdy then. And here's the truth. You were a great person then. You were the most confident you were. That's why you did it. It's just, could you have done it differently? Could you have handled it differently? Of course, everyone could. No one's perfect. But you're never going to meet the best version of yourself if you don't go through the trials and tribulations like this, even publicly.
Exactly.
And I'm willing to bet you, Krissi, if you would ask me, and since I do this and this is my gift, like I really grow humans and see their potential, that I think your trajectory is this. It's just going to take a little longer, but you're going to be that public figure that's going to reinvent herself, that's actually going to spread positivity through food. And I instill that in you because God doesn't give us these trial and tribulations for us not to go become excellent in our life or become better versions of ourselves. We're not aligning with his plan, so it's just a knock. It's just, let's get back in line here. I'm giving you a chance. And at least that's the way I see it, because when I do that, like the most powerful moments I've had, and I'm not talking about money, guys. The money always came later after I felt successful. It's like my body always changes on the outside after the inside feels really good. Like when I'm doing really well on the inside, like I'm really in shape, I'm really focused, I'm really doing well, the money's well, the dog's well, and even if I have a little bit of money, I'm saying the money's doing well. It's my mindset. And so that's the thing that I think that happens here. And one of the reasons that I enjoy this, and while we talked about it on the podcast, I didn't know we were going to talk about it, and haven't seen it, is that I think you're a powerful human. And I think that you have such strong energy. It was very easy because it was uncaptured. You were lightning, as we keep saying in the podcast, but you just couldn't capture it in a bottle yet. You didn't know how to capture your own lightning in a bottle, just like I didn't. And you're almost like a caged animal that was let out of a cage, and no one taught you how to be in nature because you've been caged so long. And it's not... Right. And when you're caged like that, you become a superhuman, super efficient, super energetic. Had to work my way through everything. I wasn't given anything. No one handed me anything. I work hard. I don't want anything from anyone. I'm going to do this. And people see it as like, oh my God, like, why would you work that hard? And there's so many things. And why do you have to be so aggressive? And why do you have to, why do you care so much? Well, go anywhere else in the world and the mentality is what you have, because everyone does have that struggle. We just don't have it here in the United States. And a lot of other places where they see negativity in that way, yes, could we have handled things better? Could you have handled things better? Of course. But what I'm saying is I think I know, based on my own experience, that we go through these things and they're to make us better and give us a louder voice. And you have an incredible energy. It just... when it's unharnessed, it can go any direction and can be used against you. And that I know that. Right. And that's the part of being having high energy, and it's few and far between. But anyone who has a strong law of attraction to someone, not even physical or romantic or intimate or sexual, there's just this attraction, like it's undeniable. Like, what is this? I'm curious about them. They have an energy, and when you're an energy person who's turned up your energy and figured out how to harness it, and you have other people around you that do energy, you start attracting a lot of this energy. And all humans have the ability to do this. We just don't do it. Some of it is we didn't have the grandparent like you had, or we didn't have the ups and downs like we had. But you had a grandparent, and now you've had trials and tribulations, which I think what you say is a chip on the shoulder to me is another fucking growing opportunity. And so it's like, how do we get there, and how do we know that this is just part of it? So I like this podcast. I like that we met. I like that your energy and your background is similar to mine, yet different. I've been knocked down a lot in life. There is no doubt, like knocked myself down most of the time. And even when there were like people angry at me, it was the situations that I created. And there were times that I never backed down, that I could have handled things differently, because absolutely, I'm just that person. I was on the East Coast. My parents didn't really stick up. They were always like, oh, be nice and whatever. And that just didn't work in my world growing up. I had siblings, and I went to all boys school, and I played soccer. It was very much, and I needed my own money, and I wanted my own independence, so I had to go fight for it. And so I don't know how to tell anyone this, but it's like there's a lot of instillment from grandparents and stuff like that, the same as you, and they're very influential in my life, and they pass down a lot of knowledge down to me, which is hugely important in a legacy. But I think because there's such strong energy and such an old soul, and there's such strong, like, because old people don't bullshit around. Like, there's no doubt, like, it's like, we don't have time for that. I'm going to tell you how it is. And when you're around old people as a young person like that, and they heavily influence you, particularly in food, you bring that same mentality into young people or on the TV. And I'm just saying, and just to give everyone, like, a little bit of being a human and also judging humans reasonably, which you should never do because we're all imperfect, but I get it, we do it, is just taking this into account. Like, all of us have a different upbringing, and all of us have different influences, and particularly anyone who's been raised by a grandparent or have a grandparent in their life that instills lots of wisdom in them, you end up too wise for your peers sometimes. It's why it's why I end up always dating like older women. Like, there's no doubt about it. I have a maturity thing. Like, I can't figure it out. And when I meet a younger person or a really young person with an old soul that relates to mine, I really pick up on. I'm like, holy crap, like, we're the same age, just like when I go age, and it's just the way it is. We're similar in age, so there's an energy there, but I just am like, the energy matters more than the age. The energy matters more than whether or not it's a good business idea. The energy matters more than anything, because the energy is a teller of the core values. And if you guys can really feel energy, and it's not an attraction based off of lust or I want to go hump the person's brains out, like, just being honest, it's attraction where I'm curious, where we can grow each other, where that's the attraction, where even in a relationship, even in a sexual one, even in a business one, even in wherever, where we're thinking about that, and that's the thread of our life, where it's about that. You know, how do we grow each other? What is this friendship? Is it a growing friendship? And friendships are important, but do they grow each other? Otherwise, in my opinion, they're a waste of time. And I'm sorry, people are going to be like, oh, well, we've known each other for 25 years. Well, are you keeping each other in check? Or do you have honest conversations? Are you direct? If you're direct, does the person, well, you don't need to be so mean. Well, then we're not friends, because I want someone who's going to tell me if I'm fucking up. Like, I have two friends that are really like that I've been from high school. They tell me how it is. And most of the time I haven't listened, and I should have. Just saying. So, Krissi, I love this. So tell me, what is the Rotund Chef, and how did you come up with the name, and where can they find you on Instagram?
Okay, so Rotund Chef originally started because, well, I'm a big girl, or I was. I've lost 100 pounds post breast cancer, but you know, I was a big girl, and I just thought it was funny, and I love the color green, and I love pigs. I think pigs are so cute, and I was just like, how can I make this logo and really have this name that's gonna, like, encompass my personality, and you know, there was things like, you know, the fat chef, the chubby chica, you know, things that I were thinking about, and then I was like, all right, so Rotund. Rotund doesn't just mean large. It means, like, huge, like this circle of, like, ball of bigness. And
and like, it's not only big, like it's only full.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And not only did it capture and make a play on my body size, but I think it also reflected my personality as well. Like, I am just this big ball of boisterous energy. And it just fit. It just worked. And it just came to me one night, and I was like, that's it. I'm the Rotund Chef. And I searched, you know, to make sure that there was no one else with that name too. And at the time in 2012, when I created it, there wasn't. And that's kind of where the name came from. I actually used the thesaurus and looked up different words for fat, and I tried them all out, and Rotund won.
I love this. And so what is that Rotund Chef does now? What do you do now within this space? What are you trying to do? And you said you're not trying to grow, but I mean, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
So what I am doing now is I offer private dinners, and I go to people's homes or any place where they want to have an event. And I have a staff, and I bring all of the food, all of the equipment. I come in, I take over the kitchen, I give you restaurant quality experience and meals, and I clean up and I go home. So it's like literally bringing the restaurant to your home, and you are comfortable. You're able to be in a relaxed atmosphere where you can do what you want, and still have this experience, this culinary experience, and be able to share it with the people that, you love the most. And I've made so many friendships and everything doing this. It's just incredible. And I offer two different options. I have a more elegant option where, not only do I charge per head, but I also have an hourly fee, and that's plated and, very intricate. And there's no boundaries to where I can go. And then I offer, because, the whole growing up in this area and being blue collar, I feel like everyone should be able to enjoy this experience. I also offer a family style option where I come in and it's a point blank price per head. You get A, B, and C. I can do whatever within those realms. You can always add on things and stuff like that, but everything is served family style, like Sunday dinner, and it really works for families that are used to that, or maybe missing that atmosphere, that don't necessarily like the fruity fruit of an elegant plated dinner, but still want that wonderful experience. And the family style dinners bring me so much joy, because it's literally like I am just opening my soul up and sharing this, and the dishes are getting passed back and forth to each other, and it just feels like home. And I'm really glad that I decided to do the two options, because it also doesn't get boring for me. I'm not going and making the same, aesthetically pleasing dishes. Like, I'm throwing a bunch of pasta on a plate, covering it in Parmesan cheese, and being like, "Here, guys, pass it around, get in there, have fun," So it's awesome. I found this need for it, especially during the pandemic, when the restaurants and stuff were closed. But that's basically what I do. I do some small catering still, but it's not my thing. And occasionally, when I'm up to it, I do these things called meal deals, where I have a menu for the week, and they're home cooked meals. And the menu for Monday will be chicken Alfredo with garlic knots. Then for Tuesday will be homemade beef stew and buttermilk biscuits. And you place your orders, I package it up, and I either have a family size or individual portions, and people come up and they pick up these hot and ready meals, and they go home and they serve goodness to their families. I do that every couple of months. I'll do it for a few weeks and then, cut it off again. But it really just bringing the joy through food and seeing the happiness and the togetherness that my food delivers to people is really the most rewarding thing that I do. Like I would do it for free if I didn't like money, but it's a wonderful thing that I've gotten myself into. And I don't really advertise, I don't pay for it. All of my clients are word of mouth or, engaged through social media. I have not, I've never hired anyone to do marketing for me or, mail flyers out or paid for a Facebook ad or anything like that. I put it out there, and if people want it, they want it. And if they don't, they don't. And I and fortunate that people want it and they love it and they keep coming back for more.
Absolutely. I want to talk about this because I want to tie this together, and I want to do something full circle for you and for the audience. And I don't know if you realize this or not, Krissi, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. When people haven't met you and they don't like you or they send you threats or stuff, they've never actually met you. So, like, the fact that that has any weight in the world really, like, I think as humans, we just need to have the mindset, like, people can hate you and they come after you and you need to be afraid for your life for sure and take proper precautions. But one of the things I think that is true is that they've never actually met you. Okay. And I just want to anchor that point for a second. Here's what happens when we have to rebuild our character and our reputation, especially as someone who it matters to so much and lives life with such high energy and positivity, is the only way to do it is one person at a time. The only way to do it is one mouth at a time as a food entrepreneur, or one ear at a time if you're like me and a food entrepreneur and in this space, okay? Like it's one relationship at a time, one solid relationship, and really one long-term solid relationship that you build by doing what you're doing with Rotund Chef is worth 200 negative comments. Just that one, at least the compounding value. And if we really honestly look at the mathematical equation in that, what is it that really matters in the relationships we have and when building our character and the long-term value of the humans that we interact in with or that we spend our mental time on, I think that you're already doing it. And I think by the nature of the beast or Mother Nature or God, you are building your reputation by having the one-on-one relationships with the people, which is what made you famous in the first place before you got on the show, the show disentangled.
I have to credit, I really have to credit one of the people that I was on the show with, probably one of the people on the show that I fought with the most was Bree, the vegetarian, as everyone remembers her. Bree and she was like this annoying little sister that had so much more worldly experience than me. She was polite. She had manners. She was very methodical in her decision making, very open and dainty and unique. And when there's this one turning point, and this is where I always say, I joke that I started to hate her. And I say hate all the time. It doesn't mean I actually hate the person. I'm just like, oh, I hate you. You know what I mean? But like, it's really...
It's a total East Coast thing. It's a total East Coast thing. Like, it was just like, and it was really trendy, like, for a long time. Like, oh my God, I hate that, or I hate her. And it's like someone would got a really nice gift.
People
oh my God,
so
I hate her.
Seriously.
I know, but
so
same for me.
Like,
when I moved to Colorado,
hate people, and I'm like, oh God.
When I moved to Colorado, people just really cambered me for, like, I use too many cuss words, and I'm too direct, and why am I so aggressive, and why do I talk so loud, and oh my gosh. So I know what you're talking about. I was just like, well, I've lived all over the world, but I've never really stayed anywhere where they've called me this. And I'm like, isn't everyone not wanting to waste their time? Like, what's going on here? Because I had moved from New York to Colorado, New York City, and it was so like, even though I'd been around the world and worldly, I was still a fish out of water. So anyway, go ahead.
Right. So Bree, I remember we had finished filming one day, and we all kind of had to stay together. We had wranglers because it was a competition-based show, and if word were to get out, who was there and what show we were on and things like that, obviously would ruin the show. So we essentially had, like, we called them handlers, and they went with us everywhere. They drove us everywhere. I remember I went to get my hair done one time, and literally the guy is standing behind me like a security guard, making sure I don't tell the hairdresser what I'm doing in LA. Why am I here? So anyway, so we we were hungry after filming. We were not at the studio. We were on location somewhere, and we all were like, oh my God, we're hungry. Let's go somewhere for dinner. So we stopped at this place that supposedly had the best fried chicken in LA. It was not, but regardless. And we're all sitting at this big, like, shoe horse shaped diner table. And Bree is 2 people down from me. And I tasted the chicken, and, you know, it needed salt. And I looked at Bree and I said, hey, can you give me the salt? And she picked up the salt shaker and she looked at me and she said, please. And I said, no, give me the fucking salt. And because I was just so offended that someone younger than me, you know, was correcting my manners, because to me, there was nothing wrong what I said. At my family, it's like, yo, give me the salt. Pass the salt. Yo, where's the salt? You know, so
yo,
me,
bro, throw me some bread. Yeah, I get it. I know.
Normal.
I know. Yes.
Request. For her to do that, I was infuriated. And everyone at the table looked at me like I was trash because I didn't say please. And I thought, oh, you are my enemy now. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where that love-hate relationship between us started. And she said in one of the private interviews, and it stays with me to this day, she said, I think Krissi is a great cook, but because of her personality, I do not think she is ready to be Master Chef. And she couldn't have been more accurate.
Of course.
Because I did not have the social skills, the worldly, you know, I was this, you know, from the box person. And, you know, Bree really opened my eyes up to being more polite. Niceness will get you places. You don't have to be so aggressive, you know, and it did, like I said before, it didn't happen overnight, but Bree was really a very, and I think she knows it, but I've never actually said it. So, she's living in Dublin now. So when this is edited and aired, I'm definitely going to send her the podcast to listen to. Bree was very instrumental in me wanting to become a better person. Yeah. She made me want to become a better person because she was so much younger than me, but had so much more truth and compassion for people. And, you know, I think if we didn't have that interaction at the table, I would have gotten to know her a little bit better sooner. And maybe I would have gone through that competition a little more positive and a little bit more willing to not close the people off that had been rude to me from Jumpstart. And maybe I wouldn't have had that giant chip on my shoulder. But Bree was very instrumental in me wanting to not be the person that I was portrayed to be on TV. And let's be real. Oh, I said all of those things. I did all of those things. Did I do them in the context in which they were edited? No. But it is what it is, you know. Yeah. I always tell my son, you know, a screenshot's worth 1,000 words. Well, a stint on MasterChef Season 4 is also worth 1,000 words. Yeah. And I learned some valuable lessons. But, Bree, when you hear this, I love you, you little witch.
Well, and I want to say this. I'm going to touch on a few things. One is, like, how do I say this? Often the best of us who have to work the hardest at our skill have to have the chip on our shoulder to become as great as we are. I don't know how else to put it to you, and I agree that we should be politer. But a boxer got to be a boxer, or most soccer players or basketball players or musicians had really rough lives to get to where they are. It takes a certain chip on your shoulder, and people try to take advantage of you because you have energy and you don't have the business sense, like you said. I will say that you noted that, and people try to take advantage of that. So while I agree with you, I also want to defend you in this way, not because you need it and you shouldn't grow, but I want to say this, is that when you're beaming and you're gleaming, or whatever the words are, and you're really bright and you're maybe not in a bottle yet, the lightning, it's you. people try to take advantage or they burn you out. They want to maximize the energy that you give. And it's a lot, okay? And so that's one. Two is, I agree, we have to learn and we have to reflect. And if we didn't do it in the first place, it wouldn't be a snapshot. So 100%. The other thing that I want to say is this, for me, and I agree with one of the things you said, is I think as humans and as entrepreneurs, and particularly us humans that really have to fight for things, we just have something inside of us that burns hotter. Like we're a little bit sharper and we cut a little more, and it's not intentional. It's just we don't want to waste life for a second, and we should be politer. And I say thank you a lot. I probably say I'm sorry too much, where it leads people to take advantage of me now. I've overcompensated. And, but I think it's important, and I want to answer a question that came in the podcast. I haven't answered, but I think this is the right time to answer it. Like the name of the podcast, if everyone goes back to the beginning, I named it Justin the Food Entrepreneurs because I liked Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5. Like I grew up, my father was 38, 39 when I was born. And if I have kids, I'm going to be that age difference, just so we're aware. But I respected the music from there. I also respected that they grew out of their family or they grew out of their bands when they became independent. I also understood it took the fire of someone younger. So I'd always been younger. I'd always been the younger soul, and I felt the fire, especially in the entrepreneur world, because I started at 18 years old in food and mowing lawns and stuff. I was 7 when I first started mowing lawns and fields and figuring out business and soccer and how to get myself to places and all of that. So fruit stands and vegetable stands on the side of the road, 4 of them, and so on and so forth. So one of the things is, when you're that type of person, like you attract a lot of other people that are like that. And the reason is it's a lot of years of compounding. I don't know why. It's not something that just happens. The fire just doesn't burn. It's like hard knocks and bad things and picking yourself back up a lot of times, where a lot of people who don't have uncomfort in their life don't ever have to go through that. So there isn't that beam. I'm sorry. I just don't know how else to describe it. And if you're a parent, you need to put your kids in uncomfortable situations. I'm sorry. Like, give them a chance
Absolutely.
to be. And so
Yep.
that's the magic there. And when someone hasn't been through it, or everyone's been raised properly, or everything looks so perfect, and it's not that the person hasn't been through hardship or whatever, or one person hasn't grown more than the other. I think we often misunderstand that what grows me or what burns my fire is not what grows you and burns your fire. And so often a fighter, if they turn out that flame or they become too domesticated, they lost the ability to win. They're no longer valuable. People are no longer attracted to them, want to watch them fight. They no longer have the flame, but they've domesticated him. And so this is the thing that's hard about being an entrepreneur in public opinion and being in food, is because there's love, passion, sexuality, ambition. So many entrepreneurs out there that, yeah, everyone watches these TV shows and they don't understand that a lot of the passion that's going on, this is not the same as you cooking in your home for your family and it's lazy desert. No, we're trying to make a living. We're busting ass. We've got SOPs.
Right.
We've got regulators that are up our butt. We've got to do whatever. So I think there's that. So I'm going to tie it back to Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. I never knew that my purpose would be so tied to growing the humans or other entrepreneurs, or connecting the entrepreneurs, or even connecting with entrepreneurs around the world as it did with this podcast. I started as an idea that maybe it would help for marketing to attract people to the food business we were in. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I just knew I needed to do it. And yeah, and a lot of times the chip did come out wrong, or I said things I shouldn't have said, and I've had to reflect on it a lot. And all I can say is this, the thing that I think is the most beautiful thing about humans, and we think it's perfection, but it's actually purity. And that is our ability to constantly want to grow and be better and achieve excellence. And And that's what I mean by purity, is that I'm pure in my intentions. I'm positive in my intentions. And you may receive it wrong, but am I trying to do it in the right way, and am I being positive in it? And yes, the way I speak, can it have a negative impact on someone? So I need to not be so loud, not be so aggressive in the rest of the world, and be very aware of my environment and what I'm doing. But I think your episode has been hugely impactful, and we didn't even talk about breast cancer and the fight for your life for that.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to have you back on, Krissi, to talk about more about the farming. I'd like to continue the entrepreneur conversation.
Sure.
But thank you very much. We went on way longer than I wanted to, but we had the time, so it's my podcast, and no one else is recording today, so we're going to do this.
You can do what you want.
Yeah, I get to do what I want. That's part of being my own boss. That's also part of keeping the chip in check, is that I understand that if I have to work for someone else, that I don't do a very good job as a human, because I'm very independent and I'm very free-spirited and I'm very rebellious also. And I do not like being told what to do in the slightest, because I will do the opposite. I don't know why. And if I see a group of people telling me all to go in one direction and they're all going that way, there is no way I'm going that way. Like, the fear of God goes into me, like something's not right there. I need to go where opportunity is, where no one is. And I don't know. That's just who I am. But again, if I don't keep myself in check with exercise and 75 hard, and I don't keep myself in check by reading and growing, and I don't keep my businesses at a reasonable size of where I am at the time, which is what you talked about, to grow them and scale them and build them, I do turn into a monster. And I do turn into not a great person. And particularly when you have that beaming energy, it's very easy for it to turn negative and then spread negativity, or people to use it, or something you said to say, see that energy? I told you it was negative. Let me use this example. Bam. And all of your energy gets seen that way. And so because you have this energy, and people want to think the energy is wrong because they don't have it. And I'm sorry, I probably just lost like 10,000 listeners or something, but it doesn't matter. And what matters is that we're trying to share a story, and we're trying to let people know that, like, the energy is earned, and the energy takes time, and you got to have a long-term focus. And it started with you by instilling values from a grandfather when you were a kid. And so thank you, Krissi. I really appreciate
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. I'm going to reach out to you later today, and we'll set up another recording for later this month, if that's cool with you. And
absolutely.
And
I'm enjoyed it. We had a great conversation.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave everyone with this. What you're doing with Rotund Chef is a future of the world, okay? And I'm going to say this because I identify trends very quickly, and I like seeing where everyone goes, particularly when there's huge financial crisis, disasters, worldly epidemics like we just had, which we've had them. There's like the third one since I've been around. And in food and as an entrepreneur. And we have delivery going on, and we have the restaurants, people are ordering it and then having someone deliver it to their home and paying the extra money to have it delivered and all of that stuff and the rest. The future is that we are going to see more chefs have a way of life that they can make money and make more connections and deliver better food by doing what you're doing, okay, what Krissi's doing. And I've seen some of my entrepreneurial friends do something similar in Seattle and Atlanta and Nashville now. And I think it's important that we touch on this because, fine, you want the convenience of a restaurant in your home and you're ordering and getting it to your home, but you can actually now bring the quality chefs, the quality food, their ideas. I'm talking about getting to know them. What do they stand for? Or do they really fight for the farms and fight for the environment and fight for food? And bring them into your home and support them and actually get to know them and experience them and what they do and get food on a whole new level, which is just like ordering food to your home, but now you get to experience, and you can have people over and actually do it that way, and it's really cool. So thank you again, Krissi. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, and I'll let you did you want to say anything before we go?
I think one of the questions that you had sent me prior was, do I have any advice for someone, entrepreneurs in general,
Absolutely.
or just people in the food? And I think the thing that I've had to learn the most was to know your value. Know your value as a person and as a person supplying a product or, a service to someone. Don't undervalue yourself. It may seem like it's expensive, but if you're worth it, baby, you're worth it. And they will pay for it. Trust me. And that is probably the biggest advice that I will give. Know your worth.
Yes.
Know the value of the product and service that you are supplying, and know that there's nobody that can do it like you, and charge accordingly.
I love it, and you are 100%. I've never talked about it, but I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And be patient, and don't be so quick to react. And
exactly,
you don't have to respond right away. And don't be afraid to negotiate. Like, honestly, it's okay. The rest of the world does it. We just don't do it. But that's the reason we don't get the value, and we complain, and we have, we get, I forget the word. Anyway, we get vengeful eventually because we don't stick up for ourselves, and we don't get the value we deserve, and we think it's the other person taking it from us, but really we have the ability to do it. And I agree with you. We are so valuable, and we stack up our skills, and people are willing to pay for it because they want you. So I love it. Krissi, you blew me away. Like, I'm learning more on the podcast. Like, at this point, I'm getting more value from all of you guys than I'm giving away. So I'm just like, I'm just absorbing it like daily. I'm just like, I'm growing so rapidly as a human from all of you guys. The other day, and I'm going to leave everyone with this, I was like, God, I'm not reading enough. I'm doing my 10 pages, but I need to do more, and I need to really get more. And then someone's like, how could you get any more than what you get out of one podcast a day that you record, or the multiple podcasts you day if you're trying to front load? He's like, you get enough information from everyone to last a lifetime. Most people don't get it, what you get in a day in their entire life, which is probably true.
Yeah.
So thank you, Krissi. You grew me today. And
thank you.
I appreciate it. So you can find us on Spotify or anywhere else you grow yourself on podcasts. That's Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. And you can also find us on Instagram at Justin Food Entrepreneurs. Thank you for everyone for listening in. Share the podcast if you got value at it. You can hear we have no advertisements. There's nothing. We have no interruptions. We just go straight through to try to deliver you guys the information. So I try to stick true to that, because that is a core value that I wanted for this show, is to be able to give you guys and deliver you information as entrepreneurs and not waste your time with disruptions or distractions. So thank you for everyone listening in, and we're out.